Welcome to the Not Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And for some reason, it feels like it's been a couple weeks since we've done one of these, but we haven't. It hasn't been.
Yeah, it's been exactly 1 week ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. I think
life in I almost said 1919. It's 2019, Steve.
Last time we did it was in 1919, and booze was not allowed.
The Telegram podcast. Beep, 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 beep.
But yeah, like, where I live, it started snowing and stuff. So, like, the last week has just been a fog of, like, this is Wednesdays and Thursdays, I've said it before, are usually my days off every week. And I feel like I've just slept the entire time. And
that's why I hate this time of year, because you get the snow and it's dark, like, 22 hours a day, and you just feel like, okay, all I can do is lay face down on something and sleep.
Well, like Tuesday, I got off work early, which was nice, and I kind of just napped for like the better part of the day. And then I still fell asleep at like 9 o'clock and slept for 11 hours. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I opened the window curtain and it was like, oh, snow's on the ground. That's totally why. My body was like, wait for this shit to blow over. I don't want any part of this.
Right.
So, yeah, and then, like, when I have been awake, I've been playing Call of Duty, which is also a very sad hibernation. You find, like, your body's just shut down. You're not a human when you get into that, like, rut of, like, being really into, like, a basic-ass multiplayer game. So I'm just...
But there's a reason that they're so heavily, like, cross-promoted with Doritos and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, totally. It took everything I had to work out today, but I'm glad I did, because I was feeling like a real piece of shit for like the last 48 hours. Anyway, we kind of had to scramble this week. If you haven't listened to the show, every week me and Steve get together and just tell each other stories, and the only real criteria we have for it is that the other person doesn't know what it is. But today we're changing that up in that I don't really know what this is. But I'm bringing the story today.
Yep. Ben's the go-to, like, oh crap, we're not ready. Take it away, Ben.
Well, and then I turn to my internet friends, the folks at any creepypasta site anywhere, and some Reddit posts. And today we kind of, had to decide what we were going to do for a story. So I literally just pulled this out at random 5 minutes ago. It's a story from a user named Super Battletoad 64, and it's called The Trail. I don't think that
was a real game.
There was a Battletoads for the SNES. It wasn't called that though. It was Battletoads and Double Dragon, I believe.
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't be Battletoads 64. That'd be N64.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they're making a new Battletoads now, but it's the first game since like the arcade days,
right?
And
yes.
Either way, that's some. We'll just fall down the rabbit hole of like everything about Battletoads and why it fucking ruined my life. I rented that game a lot, and it was terrible. Anyway, this is called The Trail. I love the forest, and I don't see how anyone couldn't. Which, right from the get-go, I already, like, there's a lot of reasons why someone wouldn't love the forest.
Yeah. I mean, you had me with the first sentence, because I do. I love the forest. And then I don't see how anyone couldn't. I see a million reasons why people couldn't. Like
fucking bears, getting lost, bugs, and
just physical exertion, having to actually move.
Yeah, being out in nature is great until you realize you have to be a part of it. I don't see how anyone couldn't. The chirping of the birds, the rustling of leaves drew me like a fly to honey. A poet once said, "Man's soul lie within the trees," and I'd be inclined to agree. Near my home was a national park with plenty of trails, creeks, and caves, a beautiful place in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Long stretches of nothing but nature and its beauty. I never understood some people's fear or hate of the woods until a few months ago. A cold April morning, I was off of work. For the first time in my busy life of the past few weeks, I didn't have to commute to Louisville. I could stay in my small town and enjoy the bachelor life as best as I could, running into the forest completely alone.
That's not what I picture when you picture the bachelor life.
Yeah,
but
the swinging bachelor.
I always love that, though, in media. Like, they're actually just making fun of it on a episode of Family Guy I was watching last night, where, like, you always see they're like, oh, yeah, bachelor life, like, it's a good thing. And generally, you're describing some guy that hasn't showered in 4 days. That's like...
You're describing me. Sleeping all the time, playing Call of Duty, and tweeting too much.
Don't get me wrong, it's got its, like, draw, but it's not like this, like...
Right.
Utopia thing.
No, it's actually really miserable. My creepypasta about the bachelor life is actually so much more tragic than this dude's. I went out onto the trail that morning, athletic shorts and a t-shirt, embracing the cold air rather than being opposed to it. I set out on the paved gravel trail from the parking lot, up past the yellow upon brown sign welcoming you to the National Forest. The parking lot behind me was pretty empty that morning. 1 or 2 cars on the far side, a park ranger's Crown Vic, the ranger sitting on his hood and enjoying a cup of joe. I was glad to know I'd have the trail mostly to myself, and so I broke out onto a jog, earbuds set in and the volume pumped up. The trees breezily shook in the morning air, the sun clouded out. Overcast, maybe rain later. I huffed and shook my head, continuing on down the trail. I passed another jogger at one point and we shared waves, but I saw no one else for a while. I think half an hour passed, judging by how many songs I'd cycled through, until I came up to Big Bend Fork, a split in the trail leading up 2 different paths. One path was a little more overgrown, and I'd only been up there a few times. It led past an old grill and bench, along with an abandoned power box shack, which had been since transferred to the other path, my normal one, which went past some campgrounds and a fishing dock. However, to my surprise, a park ranger was there, armed, what looked like a tranquilizer rifle in his hands. It would be a surprise. To be fair, if I was a park ranger and they gave me a tranquilizer rifle, I would be brandishing it too at all times. He seemed to be guarding the trail and keeping an eye out. I stopped my jog and took the earbuds out, asking him what exactly was wrong. Luckily, it wasn't anything too scary. A few large bears had been spotted wandering around upon the campgrounds up ahead. A mother and father and cubs, and they ripped up a vacant tent of another hiker. Yeah, not scary at all. Like, this is somebody who should get ripped apart by a bear if you're not, like... I'm not saying you have to be, like, pissing yourself, but bears are fucking terrifying. And if a park ranger is standing there saying they're in the area, you should probably be a little fucking nervous.
Yeah, especially, like, after they've ripped up, like... That's one of those things where I know in nature, or whatever, they're always going to be like, okay, be careful of bears. But once one has, like, encroached on humans like that, then it's more like, okay, you got to, like, stay away from this area because there's a problem. Like,
right.
It's not usually like, well, some hikers got attacked, but that's cool.
You're right. Black bears aren't the most dangerous bears, not at all, but with the cubs, the parents tend to be highly protective. Better safe than sorry, the ranger told me, and that the trail should reopen the next day when they could relocate the bears deeper into the woods. Another ranger had headed up the second path and reported nothing abnormal, so he assured me it was safe. The path that way was shorter and would probably let me finish my jog before the rain came, but I had no choice. I jogged, like he really wants to jog in the rain. He's like, man, what a bummer. I jogged along the other path and up into the more overgrown part of the park, and hoped the storms would be delayed long enough for me to finish my jogging routine. Another half hour or so along the gravel path, grass starting to overcome it further on up, it clearly saw some level of disuse. That much was clear. I reached the rusty bench and felt my legs begin to give out. Time for a break. Yeah.
Generally, it's not great if you're like still on the outward portion of your jog and your legs are giving out, because you gotta make
this
it back.
guy's like, really? I know, this guy's like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to like, do my full jog, but his legs are falling apart before he's even like
right
at the halfway point.
Well, normally I crawl back to my car, but
yeah. I slowed my pace down and walked off the trail to the bench, taking a seat and giving my body a rest. My head tilted up to the sky and I shut my eyes, lost in the world of 80s music. Which you can't just say. You got to tell me what song, man.
Yeah, that's true.
You got Tears for Fears in there, you got to let me know.
Yeah, that's a wide range of music types.
I'm not sure how long I sat there, but after a while I started to smell something. Something wafted over to me, and I couldn't fully tell what it was. It seemed to be coming from further up the trail near the power shed. Whatever it was, I hopped off of the bench begrudgingly, stretching out and doing a few toe touches before continuing on the trail. The smell became more pervasive as I made my way further up, and I started seeing some kind of material along the trail. Bits of red, black, some gray. Strewn along the sides of a trail in odd patterns, I stopped and picked up a few pieces of black hair stuck to... Wait, what? All right, he fucked up. It literally says I stopped and picked a few pieces up. Pieces of black hair stuck to them thanks to static. They were pieces of tarp. Why not just say pieces of tarp?
No, that's the shocking reveal, not the hair stuck to them. It's like, oh my god, it's pieces of tarp.
Like I was gonna say, like there's aspects of this that are better written than some of the other creepypastas we've done, but he has these like just odd sentences where it's like he's not sure what's important until like the very end, and rather than restructure the sentence, like you just go on this weird fucking maze.
Maybe he's like, I forget which drug it is. There's a drug you can take that it's like fat soluble, so it can get into your fat cells, and then like you'll be sober for a while, then like randomly, like you'll metabolize it and you'll be high again. Like maybe he's going like in and out of yeah,
or he's like just dehydrated from his brisk jog.
That's true too. Yeah.
Maybe from that fence. It would make sense. They continued up the grassy trail towards the distant power shed. Something told me not to check, that it may be the bears. But I knew there was another ranger out here, so I carried on. That's when the smell got worse. The smell got worse and I could see red spray on the grass. Reddishness over parts of the tarp leading up to the old, rusty, cream-colored shed building. I could tell from the trail that the shed door was open, and that the trail of this paint, or... God, no. It couldn't have been blood, I thought. But I followed it. Breaking off the trail, I walked up to the shack, which itself had a small gravel trail, a sign on the wall reading, "Keep out, rusted and grimy." The smell was...
wait, did the sign just say "keep out" and the sign was rusted and grimy, or did it literally say "keep out, rusted and grimy"? Like,
Keep Out, Rusted and Grimy, which is it's a new wave band.
But they're not allowed in that shed. Everybody else can, but it's like, you guys keep out.
Right. The smell was unbearable by now, and I could see what it was. Behind the shed, off to the angle I couldn't see from the trail, was a large black body. Hairy, fat, animal-like, and ripped open. Flies massed around it. I clasped a hand over my mouth, holding back the urge to vomit. I got a better view of it as I closed in on the shed and could tell its face, its skin there. Parts of it were ripped clean off, leaving bone or muscle or flesh behind, but no skin. Wait, what? How do you have flesh but no skin?
Wait, how is it a large black body if all the skin's gone? And wouldn't it just be muscle colored?
It's, black muscles. However, the red trail didn't go to the bear. It went inside the shed. The door was open slightly, and the shed itself wasn't too bad nor too small. I don't know what that means. Not a bad
just
shed.
Right. Like, Goldilocks might be inside.
Yeah, totally. It could hold a few power terminals and breaker boxes and could maybe hold 8 or 9 men standing together. This guy thinks about shit way too much.
And then weird terms, like,
Yeah,
how big was the shed? About 3 breaker boxes and 9 men.
This is something we've talked about when doing creepypasta shows, like, and we talk about it when we've brought our own, like, how much detail is too much, you know, because this just overcomplicates it. I have no fucking idea. He said the word path like 15 times, and he's brought up this shack, and I have no vision for it, except it's cream-colored.
And it's not too bad and not too small.
Yeah, it's porridge. The smell got even worse. Flies buzzed around about as I neared the door. Every instinct told me to turn back, and I nearly did, until I heard a chewing noise. A chomping, spitty, chewing sound. A breathing, a shuddering, like a human. I thought someone may be getting attacked by an animal. I couldn't just leave, not if they were in danger. I pressed the door open slowly but surely, pale light from the outside beaming in, dust particles scattering from it as more of the room was opened up and illuminated. The old power boxes and monitoring systems were dusty, destroyed, long since vandalized and abandoned.
What condition were the 9 men in, though?
Yeah, right. Hang on, everybody stand together so I can see how big this place is.
The dusty men stood together, vandalized, and...
The red trail continued, blackened and thick, inside the shed to a dark corner. I could make out a silhouette in the stark something, huddled, or maybe sitting or laying. I couldn't tell. My hand remained over my mouth, the smell absolutely unbearable by now, but I pushed the door further open. The sounds of chewing stopped, and as the wave of light rushed over from the open door, I wish I hadn't been there. A man, but not a man, a humanoid, maybe, sat there. His palms were bloody and bony, bare claws shoved into his fingers where nails had seemingly been ripped off. His body was pale and patchy, with thick hair and what seemed to be fur, some gray and falling out, some black and fresh. As I looked over its full body, I noticed then what gives me chills to this day. The bear's face was badly plastered over his own skull, his eyes pale and his features gaunt, bits and pieces of the mutilated bear attached to his own body, his nose ripped off and left with a poorly fitting black one of the bear I had seen outside. Further in the corner behind him, the unmistakable off-violet uniform of a Kentucky park ranger. His legs, or what was left of them, stuck out, his chest completely torn open, and his entrails hanging from the thing's fingers. A look of terror and of shock was solidified on his half-eaten face. So why is this called the trail?
Well, because there was a trail that he was jogging on, then he followed a trail to the shed, and then the trail of blood.
And I'm not bashing him. I suck at titles too, but it seems like the trail is the least important part of this story.
Well, yeah, I mean, it should be the shed.
The shed, yeah. The shed that could fit 9 to 10 guys, depending on how thin they are.
More if there weren't the 3 electrical boxes, but...
Yeah, and a couple electrical boxes that have since been vandalized. The thing stared at me, head tilted in curiosity. That's gotta hurt your self-esteem. Like, this thing's like, what the fuck? What's wrong with this guy?
Yeah, it backed off in terror. I could see it trying to throw up.
It begged me to stay away and called me a monster.
Yeah.
It shat itself and ran away.
Nearly shat itself.
It nearly shat itself. I was absolutely silent, as was it, like we were locked into some kind of staring contest, like it was looking upon me with the same shock and awe I had looking upon it.
There you go.
Hey, as you know, horrible fucking bear human monsters are just as scared of you as you are of them.
Well, really, is there any creature on this world that's more terrifying than man?
I would say no. We're fucking weird and gross. Right. Like I imagine like bears look at us the same way you look at like, it's like the Matrix when Neo comes out of that tube for the first time and he's just fucking wet and gross and the robot unplugs him. Then it smiled, a toothy, bloody grin. It's mottled. I actually didn't know that word, mottled. Huh.
Yeah.
its mottled yellow teeth jagged and barely fitting together. My blood went cold. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But a sudden lightning strike and a rumble of thunder from the coming storm broke the silence, and it startled me. I couldn't help but scream, losing my cool in that one moment.
It didn't sound like he ever had cool.
No, he was playing it cool. He was like, I'm going to win this fucking staring contest for sure.
Hey, baby, what's up?
If that thunder didn't hit, I would have fucking kicked your ass, creature. The creature didn't like that. He didn't like it at all. Maybe he perceived me as a threat or as prey, but it let out a howl, an unnatural howl, and it lunged off the floor. I was startled, but I've been running and jogging since middle school. Always with the humble brag.
Yeah.
I've been running and jogging since middle school, and as soon as it started moving, I took off in a sprint down the trail and back the way I came, away from the shed, away from whatever the hell was chasing me.
Was disappointed I wasn't going to get my full distance in.
But then my knee hurt, so I needed to take a break, But it screamed like a banshee and ran like one, too, which is that what banshees do?
I thought they floated. Aren't they ghosts?
Yeah, I thought they flew at you.
Yeah.
I thought they kind of just came to your door and went, "Wah!" And you're like, oh no, the banshee, but it never actually did anything.
Right. My understanding, to stay completely on topic, is that like the banshees, I don't think you generally see them, but I think you can. But it's more like you hear a banshee cry. They don't do crap, but that's supposed to be like within 3 days you die. Like it's an omen, but they don't kill you.
Which, I think that's them just taking credit for shit. Like, people die all the time, every day.
I know. I'm going to go to my window and scream out at once a night, every night, and then when somebody dies, be like, yep, I did that. I predicted it.
Out of 50 people you scream at on a given day, how many of them die in 3 days? You only remember the one that worked out.
Right.
I could hear its footsteps right behind me, its bestial, primordial grunts and screams as it pursued me. I lost all track of time as I ran, all sense of being. Like, well, wait, are you fucking, keep counting the seconds when you're, running for your life?
Well, I mean, if you remember back to the beginning of the story, he's good enough to, as you're running, be able to tell time by how many songs pass, because it's totally normal to count the amount of songs you listened to.
That's a good question. How many songs played while you were running from a monster? And what was playing?
Well, the average song is about 3 minutes and 38 seconds long, and 9.5 songs played, but one of them was Leonard Skinner, and that's like an 8-minute song.
The beast would have got me if Beat It by Michael Jackson wasn't blaring. I lost all track of time as I ran, all sense of being. Adrenaline rushed through me, and I was on autopilot. I sprinted for what seemed like an eternity until I nearly reached the Big Bend Fork. I looked behind me to see if I could still see it, but I couldn't. I couldn't see anything behind me for the length of the trail. But I didn't see something...
I like that it's I looked to see if I could see it. I didn't, and I didn't see anything. Well, did you expect to see something else in its stead then? Like
the ranger being like, hey, what's up? But I didn't see something in front of me, and I tripped. I fell on something hard but soft, fleshy and squishy, and immediately felt very warm all across the front of my body and my face, warm and uncomfortably slick. I struggled to stand, but my hands only met something squishy, a mass of wetness and disgusting, slimy surfaces. So do you get it that this is gross? Because he can keep going.
Can he? What vegetable did it feel like?
I sat up from whatever it was and could only see red. I wiped my eyes clean and then discovered I'd fallen onto the corpse of the park ranger. On his back, his face ripped to absolute shreds, his abdomen torn open and half of his torso ripped off. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life, and I scrambled up to my feet, standing over this mutilated corpse until I heard that familiar banshee cry from behind me. I looked over my shoulder, and that smell hit me again, the smell of this creature. I remembered
that the smell's directional. He didn't smell it till he looked at it.
Yeah. Only when it's in the room with you will you smell its awful presence. I then remembered the rifle, I said, thinking out loud, and looked to the ground. Sure enough, the bloody rifle of the park ranger lay just off the trail. Like, clearly it worked out for him, so
Right.
this is a great idea. I grabbed it and checked it. It was loaded, and it was an actual gun, not just some tranquilizing tool like I initially thought. Low caliber, but good enough for me. I couldn't check
He knows an awful lot about rifles from an immediate basis to not notice that it was a rifle when he saw it the first time.
So he forgets within one sentence what he just said. I couldn't check if it was loaded or if the safety was on, but I aimed it up the trail, even though he just said it was loaded.
Right.
Just as that beast of a man was gaining distance on me, it looked more horrific in the open light, and I could see every vein, every patch of mottled and rotted flesh. So he points off for using mottled twice.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good word to throw out there, but not, yeah.
But now you're leaning into it.
Right.
The blood streaming from where it had attached the mutilated bear parts. I shut my eyes, expecting death to be coming, but I pulled the trigger. A loud crack resonated through the forest. I don't know if I hit the thing or not, but I heard a howl and the rustling of leaves. I opened my eyes after a moment and looked ahead. It was gone. Nothing beside me, behind me, or in front of me.
You know, a better way to fire a gun and or tell if you hit something is to keep your eyes open when you fire.
That's stupid. You could get hurt that way. You know, bullets seek out open eyeballs. That's why everybody will tell you, shut your eyes.
That's right. I've seen
flail.
Saving Private Ryan. If you have your eye open and you fire, it might fire at the same time, and boom, right through the scope.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But I heard the howl, the rustling of leaves. I opened my eyes after a moment and looked ahead. It was gone. Nothing beside me, behind me, or in front of me. The rustling of bushes got quiet until there was absolute silence. Me with this rifle standing above a dead man. Utter silence. I stood there like a statue, rifle still aimed, finger on the trigger, and I waited. I thought it had ambushed me. I thought it was waiting for me, but another rumble of thunder woke me from this frozen position. Droplets, then a sprinkle of rain began to fall, and without any further consideration of the situation, I took off running back down the trail. Minutes seemed like an eternity, and my body slowly gave out from the sprint. I couldn't push myself any longer, and soon I came inside of the parking lot through the trees. I mustered up my best jog to safety, down the trail and out to the pavement, but then I noticed it was no longer empty. 3 Ranger cruisers were parked in a wall-like fashion against the trail. I was panting, my vision blurry as my body continued to recoil from the fierce push I'd put it through. But I remember seeing men behind the cars, black and white cars, weapons aimed at me. Were they police? Rangers? Had someone called them here? I didn't know. I couldn't think. "Drop it," was the last clear phrase I heard before I collapsed to the pavement. The patter of rain on my blood-soaked clothing, the final thing I heard before it all faded away. I blacked out entirely. I didn't sleep well nor feel well, even when they let me out of the hospital I woke up in, because all that awaited me was a ride in the back of a state police truck to the local detention center. Details were fuzzy, and it all seemed like a blur, but the looks I got from the cops told me what I needed to know. I appeared in court not long after. 2 counts of first-degree murder of 2 Kentucky park rangers. They never found the bodies of the mangled bear nor the ranger in the shed, but with my clothes caked in blood and a crimson-spattered weapon in my hand, I was the only possible suspect to them. Except the bears that you just fucking talked about. What the fuck are you...
Especially when you look at it's like, you have a gun. It's got to be you that used the gun to rip the ranger's face off.
It's one of those famous Winchester fucking rifles that rips a man in half and fucking peels his face off. That famous gun. What the fuck? With the huge amount of blood found in the shed and 1 dead ranger left on the trail, I was to blame. I tried to plead my story. I wanted to, but even running it in my head sounded ridiculous.
So it was better to just take the rap. Like, I don't want to sound stupid, so I'll let you put me in jail.
What fucking lawyer did this dude have who wasn't immediately like, he didn't do it, a bear did it?
Well, the lawyer that showed, he walked in with his 3-piece suit and bear face sewn to his skull.
Right.
As the monster's final, like, irony.
They're like, not even an insanity plea. With the huge amount of blood found in the shed and one dead ranger left on the trail, I was to blame. I tried to plead my story, I wanted to, but even running it in my head sounded ridiculous. What, that a bear man had killed both men and I was only out for a jog? That my DNA was on the corpse of one and his blood was on me because I tripped and fell on him? An idiot might believe that, but sadly for me, the justice system wasn't as dumb as some people say it is. It is stupider.
Why was his DNA on the corpse? Did he have sex with it when he fell into...
Yeah. I fell into something squishy and I just couldn't help myself.
When I realized what it was scared, but I figured I might as well finish at this point.
Yeah. It doesn't, he kind of leaves that part out tastefully, but... It's been 8 months since I was placed in this prison. 8 months since I've had to wear this jumpsuit, shit in an open toilet, shower in a public shower, eat the slop they give us. 8 months because of my curiosity and my love of jogging. So he's blaming it on jogging. Like, I never exercised again.
I can get behind this story now. It's an anti-jogging story.
Yeah. Well, jogging's terrible.
It is.
Like, of all the exercises, it fucking sucks. It's so hard. They're still doing tests and trying to determine every possible factor, but their search across the forest turned up no signs of anything that could rip a dead... I'm adding this. It's just absurd to me that, like, nobody would think, like, it's probably a bear, actually.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you would be a suspect. That was the first thing I thought, like, when you come walking back into civilization covered in blood, carrying an officer's rifle.
But think about what the body is. Like, the state of the body, like, it's way more believable to me that this dude's traumatized being attacked by a bear, and they were looking for a bear.
Yeah, and like I'm saying, you wouldn't just completely be like, "Okay, sir, go home and take a shower." You'd question him.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. He comes out of the woods with a weapon. There's no fucking rifle on the planet that can recreate a bear attack.
Right. And you could argue, well, maybe he slaughtered the guy and tore him apart, then took his weapon. It's like, well, then where's like all the defensive like wounds or there'd be signs of struggle there. Like,
yeah, and then why did he look like he went to the woods for a jog? You know? Anyway, they're still doing tests and trying to determine every possible factor, but their search across the forest turned up no signs of the dead ranger. No other body to prove the case that I had nothing to do with the deaths of these men. That's how justice works. You can't prove that you didn't kill them.
Well, I guess does it mention, like, what race he is, because that could play a part of this.
That's true. Yeah. That's
Stupid
very
America.
True.
That's not me laughing at minorities' misfortune. That's me pointedly pointing out our crappy ass system.
Exactly. Hell, they thought I was potentially insane with the trauma I had of that day showing through, and my story of a monstrous bear man being the murderer. My assigned therapist gave me this journal to write my thoughts in, and even if I'm not insane, it still comforts me to write my story. It comforts me to know that maybe, just maybe, I'll be proven innocent, and I'll get to be out of this place and back to my normal life. If you're already in jail for the murder, they're not going to go back and be like, it was a bear attack. Like, you're fucked, dude.
Yeah.
I'll be proven innocent, and I'll get to be out of this place and back to my normal life. But I'll never go jogging in the...
Sew a bear face onto my face and put the nail... Twist, I am the creature.
Back to my normal life, yes. As a bear killer man. But I'll never go jogging in the woods again. That other man couldn't have killed the first ranger I met. He was at the shed. There are multiple things out there in those woods. Old things that maybe not even Appalachian folklore speaks of. Spooks and monsters existing as shadows among the trees. Howls at night, shrieks in the morning, figures in the fog. The things grizzled hunters spoke of while clutching a rifle to their side. They're still out there. Word of advice to you? Be careful what trails you go hiking on. You never know what you'll find.
I've never found that. I
Really?
did get attacked. Not really attacked, but followed by dogs that looked like they were like starving and ready to kill anything that they could to eat. So that was fun.
I had a turkey follow me for an uncomfortable amount of time.
any amount of time's uncomfortable amount of time. Turkeys are terrifying.
Turkeys are fucking weird. I tweeted a picture one time. I was walking home from work, and like I went down this like alley road, and at the very end there was just like 10 of them, and I was like, I think I'm gonna fucking die here, dude.
That mental image, taking a sip of my Coke when you said that, and it almost went everywhere. Because that's not something you expect to encounter at the end of an alley.
Well, like, it was only like 5 or so from there, but when I walked down to the end of the alley, they were packing the streets. It was so fucking scary. And I texted my brother, and I was like, I really think I'm going to get killed here. And, of course, he responded good. So...
The white man deserves it after all the turkeys we've eaten for Thanksgiving.
Sorry, Ben, you're the atonement here. But yeah, so thank you, Super Battletoads 64. That was a fun one. I'm glad that worked out because it could have very easily turned into a half an hour of boring shit.
I solemnly promise to never go jogging in the woods.
That's the thing. You went to a totally fucking public common trail, from all accounts. Like, if there's park rangers there, it can't be that disturbing of a trail.
Well, and I like kind of at the end where you get into that, like, oh, well, maybe those tales that the grizzled hunter... Basically, he implies that, like, everybody knows these things are out there. And it's like, well, then why does nobody believe you?
Right.
Like...
Yeah. But that was fun.
Yeah.
So...
as soon as we get done here, I'm going to go like walk around my house and measure and see how many men in electrical boxes I think can fit into it.
It could be 9 or 10, 12 if they're uncomfortable. It's such a weird way to like define space.
Yeah.
The most consistent shape in the known universe, the male form. Yeah. It's a good measuring post.
Are we allowing any overlap, or do they have like a personal bubble like around?
If they hug, we can probably squeeze one more in. We're gonna have a big guy hug. But yeah, that's the story this week. And there will be another story on the next episode.
Yeah, hopefully.
Or we fucked up. It happens.
It does.
So we'll see you next time.
Later.